Hello, everybody. Yes, yes, I am here, and I'm here with a Sunday rant because I have seen things on the internet which have very recently annoyed me. Um, the the thing is, I flick through X quite a lot. Excuse me. I flick through X quite a lot. I use it to keep on tabs on the Ukraine war because I often find the sources on X for some reason are more reliable than those that come out of things like mainstream media. I know, shocking, but I live in a country where the sun is still posted, so that should give you some idea about what the hell I'm on about. And basically, this post came up. This Nicholas Drummond, who has very recently put this tweet up saying that Leopard 1 in Ukraine, despite being stored unused for decades, 270 were reactivated with little effort and now provide reliable service. Reactive armor has increased protection. Its 105mm guns can deal with most Russian tanks. I guess we shouldn't be surprised it was designed by Porsche. Okay, so there's a couple of things I'm going to go over here why this tweet by Nicholas is not so much wrong, but it completely overhypes the absolute bejesus out of the Leopard 1. Like, overly hypes it to the hilt and back. So, yes, we know that 270 have been reactivated. We know a large number of them were sent to Ukraine to basically prop up the numbers. The thing is that a couple of points that he makes in this are rather, say, he overhypes the bejesus out of the tank. So the reactive armor has increased protection, yes, but you are increasing the armor protection of effectively sandpaper. The Leopard 1s were never built to be heavily armed. They were built in a time when the German designers were under the assumption that armor didn't matter anymore because ATGMs and heat rounds basically meant that it didn't matter about the armor. You could get punched through at any distance. So they didn't really heavily build the machines up, which is why they are remarkably light for an MBT. Now, yes, reactive armor will help stop a lot of the heat round projectiles that Russians like to use going through them, but even then it's going to have huge problems when facing 125mm rounds fired by anything from T-72s upwards. So the armor thing is a bit of a weird one for me, and it's one that I really don't get because the Leopard 1 is basically it's overhyped to all hell because of the fact, the speed, the maneuverability, the layout, it's awesome. But everybody's like, oh yes, the armor could be reinforced with reactive armor protection. Yeah, the armor will still get cut through by most things like a hot knife through butter. And ultimately, it doesn't matter about how good your reactive armor is. Russian Sabo doesn't care. The next thing he points out is the 105mm gun that can deal with, quote, most Russian tanks. This is completely overhyping the 105. That 105 is effectively a German copy of the L7 Royal Ordnance gun, a gun which is absolutely fantastic. It was a gun that was used by the Israeli army to blow the bejesus out of tanks in Syria and Egypt during the Six Day War and then the Yom Kippur War of 1966 and 1973, respectively. Just one problem. The tanks that the Syrians and the Egyptians were using were T-55s and T-62s. Those tanks are, although they are used by the Russians, do not make up the majority of Russian tank power at the moment. You go back a year ago, they probably did. Not at this point in time. The Russians have reactivated a lot of their older T-72 and T-80 stock, brought a lot of the old tanks back into service. You're not going to find a 105 has as much fun with this thing. There's a reason why the Chieftain was built and why the 120mm gun was introduced into British service, and that's because eventually the 105 became obsolete. And it became quite badly obsolete. By the time that the Yom Kippur War eventually ends in 1973, the L7 gun has pretty much run its course as an effective fighting weapon. And even then, the 120mm that the British had then introduced and then put on things like the Chieftain also has problems. I mean, Christ, Chieftains were getting knocked out by T-72s in the Iran-Iraq War like it was going out of fashion. Russian Sabo, and bear in mind, that's the crappy Sabo that the Russians were exporting to foreign countries. The crappy export weapons, they were punching holes through chieftain armor at like 2,000 yards, and they weren't having any kind of issue. This is a 105mm gun, which was rendered obsolete in Western service in about the 70s. So unless you're either developing a super hot saber round for the damn thing, or you're intending on developing a heat round that contact armor just ignores, then you're not going to have any fun using this thing. Ultimately, what Nicholas Drummond has just done here is he has massively overhyped the Leopard 1 as a combat vehicle. Granted, if you want to throw this thing against Russian fortified positions in support of infantry, go for it, it'll do the job. Heat and HE rounds fired by this gun will work. Well, it doesn't even fire bloody heat rounds because, it's a rifled gun. You will have a lot of benefits in using this at an anti-infantry role, and ultimately it does bolster Ukraine's armored numbers. But the idea of this thing tackling a T-72, a T-80, or a T-90 is a laughable suggestion in any shape of the word. Especially the more modern variants of the T-72s. T-72s they were fighting chieftains and they were fighting other Western-designed tanks against Iran for nearly a decade, and the T-72s were often coming off the better. Obviously the final point here about, I guess we shouldn't be surprised it was designed by Porsche. That one pretty much speaks for itself, for crying out loud. Porsche also built the Ferdinand the Ferdinand-Elephant, and then it also built the Maus. I really wouldn't hold Porsche's design influence much to account. And considering the fact that the best thing about the Leopard 1, which is the main gun, is a British invention, Porsche don't hold too much in terms of development on this one. Ultimately, the Leopard 1 is a fantastic tank. If you go back 50 years ago, in modern forms, even the more modern versions, and bear in mind that these modern versions were the ones which, oh Christ, you're talking about like the Leopard 1A5s and that. They had more armor than their contemporaries, but they're still paper thin, and you're throwing them against 125mm armed tanks. The Leopard 1 was not built to fight T-72s. It was built to fight T-55s, T-62s. That's what it was built to kill. It's not fighting many of them anymore. The Russians don't use T-62s in much of the same roles they were using them from a year or so ago. A lot of those tanks nowadays are solely used for infantry suppression and direct fire assault. They've now got more T-90s available because they've now decided that the Ural plant is going to go into like Soviet level of manufacturing. They've hauled a load of tanks out of reserve and they've modernized them. Essentially, this thing is not going to be fighting what it's designed to be fighting, and it annoys me when tanks are so dramatically overhyped. I mean, there's a counterpoint here on X from 2S7 Peon Trust. Honestly, fantastic little X channel. He is brilliant. He does a lot of really, really good work here regarding different armored vehicles, and he himself does it the best. He literally he tweeted where he reposted pretty much saying most Russian tanks are not T-62s and T-54, that's T-55s. Brilliant point. The next one he then puts is a machine that should not be underestimated or also should not be overestimated. And that's the thing I think is the best point to take away from this. Leopard 1s are fantastic at fighting T-55s and T-62s. Nothing I will ever oppose. But problem is, that's not the only thing they're fighting. And that should be something that should be really taken into consideration. So thank you very much for listening to this short little Sunday rant. I annoy myself looking through Twitter. I should probably annoy myself more just by playing War Thunder. Yeah, that's a smart idea from my end. Right. Well, I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. Please like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you on the next one.